Hi, in this video lecture we are going to learn about analysis of asynchronous sequential circuits in pulse mode circuits. On completion of this topic, the learners can be able to understand the concepts of pulse mode circuits. First we have to know what is a pulse mode circuit. We already know that in synchronous sequential circuit memory elements are clocked flip-flops. But in asynchronous sequential circuits, memory elements are either unclocked flip-flops or time delay elements. You have to know these two major difference between synchronous and asynchronous sequential circuits. Therefore, in asynchronous sequential circuits, change in an input signal can affect memory element at any instant of time. But in asynchronous sequential circuits, the designer has to consider the time delays involved to determine the maximum operating speed of the clock. So, the designer have to determine the speed of the clock. So, that is very important. In asynchronous sequential circuits, the clock is absent and state change occurs according to the delay times. Due to this, the asynchronous sequential circuits are more difficult to design. So, this asynchronous sequential circuits in general involved in two types. One is fundamental mode circuits and another one is pulse mode circuits. So, the types of asynchronous sequential circuits are classified into two. One is, as said earlier, pulse mode and another one is fundamental mode circuits. So, in a combinational circuit that attached with the delay elements connected from feedback loops are called as asynchronous sequential circuit. So, there are n input variables, m output variables and k internal states are there in this type of circuits. The delay elements provide short term memory for the asynchronous sequential circuits. So, these are called as secondary variables and excitation variables. So, pulse shape in pulse mode circuit, the pulse shape is formed by a rapid or sudden transient change from the baseline value to the higher or lower level value. Main difference between pulse mode and fundamental mode is in pulse mode the input variables are pulses instead of levels, but in fundamental mode the input variables are levels. The width of the pulses is long enough for the circuit to respond to the input, and also one more main important to the pulse mode circuit is the pulse width must be so long that it will still present after a new state is reached. So, pulse should not occur simultaneously one or two more input lines. But in case of fundamental mode circuits, the input changes should be spaced in time by at least the levels delta t at the time needed for the circuit to change its input stage. That is, the input variable should change only when the circuit is stable. Only one input variable can change at the given instant of time, and also in fundamental mode circuit, inputs or levels are not pulses. Delay lines are used for memory elements. So, the main important terms related with pulse mode circuits are pulse width, period of waveform, duty cycle, rise time, fall time, overshoot and undershoot. Pulse width means the length of pulse. In this diagram we are having on pulse width, the length of pulse is called as pulse width. Period of waveform, so the measurement from any point on one cycle to the same point to the next cycle is called as period of waveform. So, normally it is represented by the letter T. Duty cycle, the ratio of the pulse width to the period is called as duty cycle. Rise time, it is the time taken to rise from 10% to 90% of its maximum amplitude value is called as rise time. Similarly, fall time, the time taken for the pulse to fall from 90 to 10% of its maximum amplitude is called as fall time, overshoot. This is said to be occurred when leading edge of a waveform exceeds to the normal maximum value, that is called as overshoot. Similarly, undershoot, it is said to be occurred when trailing edge of the previous case leading edge, this case undershoot, the edge is called as trailing edge. Trailing edge of the waveform exceeds to the normal maximum value. And last is ringing. Both the overshoot and undershoot are followed by the damped oscillations are known as ringing. So the circuit with the different terms related to pulse are shown here. So in asynchronous sequential circuit, pulse mode and fundamental modes are the circuits. So in this pulse mode, the difference between fundamental mode is here in levels are considered in case of fundamental mode, pulses are considered in case of pulse mode. So main two differences should be considered in the present state and the next state in asynchronous sequential circuits are called as secondary variables and excitation variables. When the input variables are changes in value, the secondary variables also secondary variable do not change instantaneously. Certain amount of time is required for the input signal to propagate from input terminals to the combinational circuit over the delay elements. This type of circuit is called as circuits with fundamental mode circuits. So in this asynchronous logic circuits, the pulse mode circuits and fundamental mode circuits are the two types used here. Levels and pulses are used for triggering the circuits. So that's all. Thank you.